I think the one thing we're going to get, and this is even last week when we had a chat, from the one question sometimes, or the one chat, there's like layers upon layers upon layers that you can build on. And I think that's going to be the great thing, that one, I'm writing down and listening to, but also at the same time, everybody that's online, there's going to be layers there that they can take away. So it's going to be exciting for this next 40 minutes or so. So, but I've heard you make reference to, as leaders, we are makers.
Yeah.
Now, it's an interesting one, and I think the ability to reflect, using your term, and I know I do that quite a lot, but to me, that means that leadership is fundamentally about creating things that maybe did not exist before, rather than just managing what already existed. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. But it's also sometimes the making might be as basic as sense making.
Okay.
You know, I'm a maker of sense here. So how do you make sense out of ambiguity? Because leadership, more than anything, the reason why we wake up in the morning with that first feeling, it's something happening inside us in response to something which is happening around us, and it often will be, you know, an overly emotional response to that. But you've woken up in the middle of the night thinking about the email you haven't sent or something like that. And my wife's a clinical psych, which is, you know, I've got to say it's mostly good. You know, it's not always good, you know. But I often have the conversation with her about this, the thinking and feeling, what happens first, and she said it was probably not that important. She is a cognitive behavioural therapist, so she works with the thinking as in how our thoughts in relation to, and so it's something which you're thinking and feeling in response to your seeing and hearing, but you're only actually measured by one thing, and that's how you show up, which is what you say and do. And so to go from that thinking and feeling, which isn't a good place to be, into a place where you can show up in a way which honours the role and honours the people who have aligned their careers to what you bring as a leader, as much as anything, is again a systematic process of that. So the idea behind that is that we can't trust our feelings, but we can learn to trust our principles. And so what are your principles? Because really they're just a statement of intent. This is what I intend. They're a promise you're making to yourself, and your role is to deliver on the promise you're making to yourself in that way. And so often that's the making piece in regard to that, is just making sense of the ambiguity. You know, if you're, you know, I differentiate, for instance, between a complex issue and a complicated issue. A complicated issue, you throw experts at it, you throw logic at it, will probably find an answer. A complex issue is the one where there's no real answer, but we need to, in fact, make the best sense we can from that. And often that's from the errors we make or the challenges that we face in that sense. So that is the sense-making part. But then I think there's a bigger piece within it all, is for leaders, we're also makers of meaning. You know, if we can't find meaning in it for ourselves, well, the chances are there's no meaning in it for anyone else. You know, that. And so for me, I found an enormous amount of meaning in sport, and so the first instinct was when I wasn't, you know, I was sacked in my last role, and I'll go and do a CEO of something else, and I realised that I could only be a CEO of something of which I had a deeper meaning in, and someone said, what about a not for profit or not? Yeah, and there was definitely that possibility, but I thought, no, the thing I get meaning from is what we're talking about now, is the coaching piece, is the teaching piece, and I think I was heading that way as a CEO anyway. And the other one then is we're makers of good, I reckon. We're makers of good. You know, we want to do good work. We want to create good outcomes. We want to, and I use the word good, not great, quite deliberately. And I use a 1 to 7 scale on all my measurements, and that was from my recruiting days. I recruited footballers. 5 is good. If you're consistently good, you're a chance of getting to 6s and 7s for at least a period of time, but it stops you being a 2 or a 3. You know, it's consistency is the number one thing we're seeking here. You know, it's inconsistency which actually, you know, breaches trust. So how do I get consistently good? So how do you do good work each day? And then the next maker, I think we're makers of progress as well. You know, the idea of, are we making progress towards some outcome? Is the person progressing in their role? Sits at the heart of motivation. If we feel as though we're not making progress, motivation wanes, and wanes quite quickly. That's why people, when they do their to-do list each day, often put something on their to-do list after they've done it, because it gives them that sort of sense of progress in regard to it. And as leaders, our role is to see progress in others, perhaps they haven't seen in themselves, and make them aware of that. And all business, and whether you're a footy club, and I come from it, I was a CEO of a footy club, so I wasn't coaching the team or anything like that. So I had the profit model and the performance model as well